Hello children, this is Proshanjit sir. Now I'm just going to discuss and explain chapter number 5. The name of the chapter is Reaction to Colonial Rule, Cooperation and Revolt. So in this chapter, what basically we're just going to learn children, you must know it very well. First of all, we'll just learn about the English education. What is the impact of the English education on the society since the beginning of the 19th century, as well as we'll also learn from this chapter the different kinds of reforms, as because the Indians started to be educated since the beginning of the 19th century. So what is the impact or the consequence of the colonial educational system in the beginning of the 19th century, that we will also just come to know from this chapter. Along with this, we'll also just come to know about the different revolts, rebellions and uprisings from the different discontent sections of the society, when the peoples they got discontented against the British rule and their misrule or the colonial government. So that's why they had just revolted against their authority. So we'll just come to know about different kinds of revolts and uprisings, such as Santhal revolt and Indigo revolt, 1857's Great Revolt or the Sepoy Mutiny of India. Everything we'll just come to know from this chapter. So hope you all are well, staying at your home, and you're just learning with me on my YouTube channel. Okay, so first of all children, I want to tell you that 19th century, this is called the age of Renaissance, as in the Renaissance first occurred, it just came in the beginning of the 19th century. That was in Kolkata, means at the time it was Calcutta. So the Renaissance of India, it was obviously Calcutta centric, as because the Renaissance first appeared in Calcutta. So in that context we can say that we are really very fortunate that we have been just born over here. Okay, so what was happened actually with the beginning of the 19th century, I'm just going to tell you the story about that. It was in the year of 1800 AD when for the first time the British, they started to just educate the Indian peoples with the English language, the Western language. They sought to think that the British will take the endeavor or the opportunity to educate the Indians. So the medium of language by which they could just exchange their views, thoughts and concepts with the British, that will be English. So first of all, it was not decided by the British that English will be the medium of language, medium of exchange of thoughts, philosophies, doctrines, ethics and all these things. A Charter Act was created. A Charter Act was passed in the year of 1813. The historians, they also call it the Educational Charter Act, as because the Charter Act was promulgated, it was passed on the basis of the educational factors. So that's why this act, the Charter Act of 1813, is also known as the Educational Charter Act of 1813, where it was decided that for the better development of the Indians, especially the peoples, those who used to live in Bengal, Madras and Bombay Presidency, they will be educated. And what about the expenses for giving their education, for giving them education? What about the expenses that will be just given by the British government themselves? So annually 1 lakh rupees, it was sanctioned from the sides of the British government, and it was clearly stated that for the better development of the Indians, annually 1 lakh rupees will be spent. But it was not clearly stated that what will be the medium of language, what will be the medium of instruction that created a biggest passion during that time. So finally we know that in the year of 1835, when Thomas Babington Edward Macaulay, he had passed his educational minutes that came to be known as the Macaulay's Minute. You know it very well children. What was the main perspective of this educational minute? It was the controversy came to an end between Anglicist and Orientalist. It was stated that as because the British, they are spending, they are just expensing the money for the development of the Indians. So the money, annually 1 lakh rupees, that was sanctioned earlier by the Educational Charter Act of 1813. Now the money will be spent for the development of the Indians on the basis of the English language. So children, you can just come to know that the educational policy of Thomas Babington Macaulay, from the native education or the vernacular education got denied absolutely. It was neglected by the British government during that time, as because they were the actual owner of the land. So that's why they had determined that the rupees or the money will be just spent for the English education or the Western education only. Okay, but what was the result? As because the Indians, they also started to be educated by taking the English education. Now you may think that why did the Indians they start to just learn about the English education? As because English education was not their mother tongue, but still they were enthusiastic to just learn the English education or the Western language. Why so? You are thinking so, na? Okay, the answer is as because in the year of 1844, the Governor General Lord Hardinge, he had announced a special thing for the Indians. And what was the announcement from the side of Lord Hardinge? This came to be known as the Hardinge announcement, and where he told that English educated or Western educated peoples or the Bengalis will be given the extra facility or the privileges in getting the government job. So if you are an aspirant of government job at the time, you must learn the English language, and that created a curiosity amongst the all Indians, and that's why they had started to just learn about the English language. But all the peoples of India, they were not very much fortunate or privileged to get this education, as because peoples were there, those who belonged under poverty, it was not possible for them to just learn the English language. Why so? As because to learn English language or the Western education, it was too much expensive or precious during that time. So that's why they could not be able to just learn the English education or the Western education during that time. But few peoples were there, they were very much fond of English education, especially they were known as Bengali Bhadralok. Now I will tell you that who were known as the Bengali Bhadralok. In British India, the middle class people coming from the upper caste segment of the society or the Hindi community were called Bhadralok. I repeat, children, in British India, the middle class people coming from the upper caste segment of the Hindu community were called Bhadralok. And these Bhadralok, they had just belonged from the middle class family. You know, children, what is the definition of the middle class family? The middle class, they're not too much rich, and they don't just belong from a very poor family also. So means they remain in the middle of the ongoing society. So that's why they were known as still they are known as the middle class. Those who placed at the intermediate stage of financial well-being came to be known as the middle class. I'm just going to give one more time the definition. I'm just going to tell that who were called the middle class, those placed at the intermediate stage. It means those who were not very rich and those who were not very much poor in the society. In the middle stage, they had just belonged from of the financial well-being came to be known as the middle class. So these middle class peoples, they had taken the endeavor, they had taken this opportunity to be educated themselves by the English education. What was the main motto or the intention in getting the English education by themselves? That was to get only the government job. And one important thing was also responsible for getting the English education or learning the English education apart from getting the government job. That was they could just go very close to the British. The British, they loved all those Indians who could speak like an Englishman. Just like in 1835's Macaulay's Minute, what did Macaulay he say in his educational minutes? He told with his own audacity that by birth they will be Indians, by taste they will be British. I think you can still remember that I told inside the class, isn't it? Okay, so we have just come to know with the beginning of the 19th century when Renaissance came first in Calcutta, because Calcutta was the pioneer center of the Renaissance. So that's why the peoples of Calcutta during that time, the citizens of Calcutta during that time, they started to follow the British educational policies. They had just they just went for the enrollment in the government schools, colleges that were set up earlier by the British government, especially in the three presidencies. You know, children, what was the presidency system? Three presidencies: Calcutta presidency, the Bengal presidency, Madras presidency, and the Bombay presidency. In three different presidencies, the British, they started to just provide or provoke the English education or the Western education amongst the Indian masses, so that they could just help, the Indians could help the British in their administrative fields. Okay, now children, from page number 78, this is a small did you know or a few words, newspapers and mobilizing of public opinion. What I'm just saying from here, you just keep remembering all these points, nothing more than that will just come in your examination. So Page number 78, a few words is important only for the short questions. Even in your assignment also I have given few questions from there, so I'm just going to say what it's written over here. An English trader whose name was James Augustus Hickey, and he had started his printing business over here. It was in the year of 1778 when he for the first time urged to the British government to set up a printing press over here in India at Calcutta, during that time. The British, they had given the recognition or the affiliation to James Augustus Hickey to set up or to just establish a press. So finally a press was set up in the year of 1778, and for the first time we can know that the first printing press in Calcutta or Kolkata at present time, it was set up in the year of 1778. The first weekly newspaper, the first English weekly newspaper, that was Bengal Gazette, that was published or edited by James Augustus Hickey. So now I'm just going to tell you few newspapers, name of few newspapers as well as their editors or publishers. Don't just forget, as because this can be very much important for you in the examination for class 8 as well as for your Madhyamik examination. The first newspaper, the first weekly English weekly, that was Hickey's Bengal Gazette, that was edited by James Augustus Hickey, and that was published since 1780. Next one, the first Delhi Bengali newspaper, the first Delhi Bengali newspaper that was published regularly in India, that was Sambad Prabhakar. That was Sambad Prabhakar, and the name of the editor was Ishwar Chandra Gupta. The first daily vernacular newspaper of Calcutta was Sambad Prabhakar, that was edited by Ishwar Chandra Gupta. Next, the first Bengali weekly newspaper, it was Samachar Darpan, that was edited by J.C. Marshman. And number 3, the first monthly Bengali newspaper was Digdarshan, that was also just published and just edited by whom? It was also J.C. Marshman. So you have to just remember 4 important points in your mind. First one is the first weekly English newspaper was James Augustus Hickey's Bengal Gazette, that was published in the year of 1780. The first weekly vernacular newspaper, that was Samachar Darpan, that was edited by J.C. Marshman. The first monthly Bengali newspaper was Digdarshan, that was published or edited by J.C. Marshman. And the first daily run Bengali or the vernacular newspaper of India, it was Sambad Prabhakar, that was published since 1831 by Ishwar Chandra Gupta. It was Sambad Prabhakar. Okay, up to this. Now I'm just going to tell you about the social reform movement in the Bengal, abolition of sati and introduction of widow remarriage. Children, I know that you hardly need any introduction, any explanation about the sati system, the abolition of sati system. You know it very well that who was the pioneer progressing this movement, sati movement in India. You know it very well. Obviously, he was the first modern man of India. Exactly, he was Raja Ram Mohan Roy. He had fought against this injustice done on the women during that time, since the ancient period, since the later Vedic period. What about the injustice that was done on the women, on the society? So that's why Raja Ram Mohan Roy, that gave him a lot of pain. So for that reason, he had started a movement, a social movement, and finally, in the year of 1829, by the Regulating Act of 17, mind it, this question is very important, by the Regulating Act of 17, the sati system was banned in India, and who was responsible for just disbanding this, condemning this sati system? Obviously, he was Lord William Bentinck. He was the contemporary or the then Governor General of India. So he had just disbanded or banned the sati system in India. So different types of injustices were there that were done on the women sometime and on some poor peoples also. Apart from sati system, another important curse of the society was drowning the girl child in the river Ganges. I repeat, drowning the girl child in the river Ganges, and that was stopped by Lord Wellesley. Lord Wellesley was the then Governor General of India during that time. So he had just he had just prohibited this system previously. It was not expected from a society, from a family, that the a girl child will be just born. So that's why every time they had expected that the a boy will be there, a baby will be just born, who will be just a male hire. So that's why a system, especially in the poor family, those who could not just bear up all the expenditure from in the family, they had expected that only the baby child, the male hire was expected instead of the female hire. So finally the drowning the girl child or the children in the river Ganges was absolutely just prohibited. It was just condemned by different peoples, different personalities in India, in Bengal. Most importantly, finally the endeavor or the initiative that was taken by the then Governor General of India, Lord Wellesley, and in the year of 1803 this system was absolutely abolished. But as per to the constitution, this was abolished from the sides of the British government, but still the practice was going on, as because in different places, in remote different villages, the practice was still going on. Now I have already told you about the sati system that was banned in the year of 1829. Okay, now we will tell about Ishwar Chandra Bandyopadhyay. Yes, Bandyopadhyay was the surname of Ishwar Chandra, and mostly he was popularly known as Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar. So what was the contribution, what was the role of Ishwar Chandra Bandyopadhyay or Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar in the social reform movement? We will just come to know from here. In the middle of the 19th century, Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar organized a movement for remarriage of widows. So Hindu Widow Remarriage Act was just started by Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar in the very beginning of the 19th century, especially from 1840s or around this year. But during that time, this movement that was just aroused from the side of Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar did not get any kind of momentum. So finally, when he had just studied the Sanskrit shlokas, the Sanskrit stots so well, so finally he came to know about the Sanskrit shlokas and all those ancient holy scriptures from the Hindus, that it was not a compulsory or a mandatory function for all the women. For what they were just, it was not compulsory for them that they will just continue this system. Okay, like Ram Mohan, Vidyasagar too urged the British administration to enact a law conferring legality to remarriage of widows. And finally, the endeavor, obviously, that was taken by Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar with his help, Lord Dalhousie. He was the then Governor General of India. I repeat, Lord Dalhousie, he was the then Governor General of India in the year of 1856. 16th of July, he had legalized the widow remarriage. The Hindu widow remarriage. It was on 16th of July 1856. Finally, in that month, on 26th of July 1856, the Hindu Widow Remarriage Act was just commenced and enacted by the Regulating Act of 15. Don't forget, children, that previously the sati system was abolished by the Regulating Act of 17. Hindu Widow Remarriage Act was introduced and passed. It was enacted on 16th of July 1856 by the Regulating Act of 15. But it was enacted, it was just commenced on 26th July 1856. It was passed by the then Governor General Lord Dalhousie. Sati system was abolished by the then Governor General Lord William Bentinck, and Hindu Widow Remarriage Act was passed. It was introduced by Lord Dalhousie. Okay, now I will tell you another important social movement that was started by Henry Louis Vivian Diruzio. He was a teacher of Hindu College, Henry Louis Vivian Diruzio. So many of you have just heard the name before. And at a very young age, he had started teaching to his students from Hindu College. He had started to just promulgate, to just propagate against the social injustice, especially that came from the sides of the Hindu Brahmins. He had protested against such different or severe systems such as child marriage, caste system, polygamy, etc. Polygamy, getting married more than one time, this was called polygamy, and that was very popular amongst the Indians during that time, especially in the Bengali Hindus. So however, they fully backed the British rule and English education. Later many among that group moved away from their views and standpoints, and due to the untimely death of Henry Louis Vivian Diruzio, because he had died untimely at the age of 23, so that's why his movement Young Bengal just failed to achieve any momentum or to just put any pressure upon the society. So his social reform movement means achieved nothing. Okay, what is the contribution of Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar in the development of the women education in the society? You know that Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar is because he was very intellectual, and he's called Vidya Sagar, so that's why he got the epithet Vidya Sagar. So he was very vocal about the women education. He became very vocal about the polygamy, child marriage. Even he had also just become also very much vocal about the women education, and for that reason, when he was chosen as a teacher of Sanskrit college, so since that time he had started to just provide the women education in different parts of this state, West Bengal. Under his own initiative and endeavor, lots of women schools were just founded, were set up, as because the British, they were very much less interested to just provide the women education from their own side. So the expenses and the money that was also given by Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar. In 1850, he authored a number of textbooks for students. His massive success, a book that was known as the Varna Parichaya. Even the book is very famous and very popular amongst all the children, even today also. So the Varna Parichaya book was also published in the year of 1855. He also just got the help from different British luminaries, just like Drinkwater, J.E. Drinkwater, Bethune. So Bethune or Beaton, he had also started to just give the opportunity or the privileges to all the Indian women, especially the women from Bengal. And for that reason, the Bethune School was founded, and this school, Bethune School, later on it was just came to be known as the Bethune College. And Bethune College was the first women college of India. I repeat, children, the Bethune College was the first women college of India. So education being far too small, it would not be possible to bring everybody under the scope of education. So therefore he failed. Vidyasagar failed that the colonial government must chalk out a specific plan for education. So many times in so many districts he had just founded women educational institutions, women schools. Under his own initiative, he had started a school in his own district. It was in Medinipur. And the name of the village was Bir Singh or Bir Singha, where he had just opened an institution in the name of his mother, that came to be known as a Bhagavati Women Vidyalaya or Bhagavati Girls Vidyalaya, that also exists over there. Vidyasagar also paid a lot of attention to the spread of education among women. He took personal care to ensure attendance of girls in Beaton School. While working as school inspector, so Vidyasagar established several schools for girls. A large number of girls used to study in those schools spread over different districts of Bengal. So Vidyasagar, he was not only a social reformer, whereas he had also just propagated the women education. He was very much enthusiastic for spreading the education amongst the women, as because women women were neglected from the property rights, from the education, from every side. And one of the most important achievements in Vidyasagar's life, that was previously in the Sanskrit college. It was not allowed for the Kshatriyas or the Kayasthas to sit together with the Brahmins and to just study Sanskrit. He was, for the first time, he had introduced with his own endeavor the Kayasthas, Kshatriyas, even the Vaishyas, the students who came from the Vaishyas family, they could also sit with all other Brahmin Brahmin students. They could easily just learn the Sanskrit from the teachers. So this was also a very good achievement that was done by Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar in his entire life. Okay, now we have already discussed up to the about the social reform movement in Bengal. Now we have to just go beyond out of state, that was in Maharashtra. What was the social reform movement that was started in Maharashtra? Just like in Bengal, in Maharashtra also the social reform movement was started. It was in the year of 1866 when a committee was formed under the leadership of Vishnu Shastri Pandit for advocating widow remarriage. So the widow remarriage movement that was started by Vidyasagar earlier in West Bengal, Bengal during that time. So the movement also spread out of Bengal, and in Maharashtra also the movement sparked within a very short span of time. So later on, Prarthana Samaj, this is very important, children. Prarthana Samaj, a social organization, those who had just worked very hard for the development of the poor peoples in the society. Prarthana Samaj, they had also just helped a lot for the development of the poor people, especially those peoples who became the victim of the injustices from the upper class people. So that's why Prarthana Samaj, that was founded in Bombay, and that was led by Atmaram Pandurang and Mahadev Govind Ranade. So Atmaram Pandurang and Mahadev Govind Ranade, under their initiative in Bombay, Prarthana Samaj was founded. Now I'll tell you what was the contribution or the role of Pandita Ramabai in women's education. Pandita Ramabai, she was born in a Brahmin family. She had just studied ancient Indian scripture, overcoming all social obstacles. At the time, the intercaste marriage was just not recognized or affiliated in the society. So that's why what was happened, Pandita Ramabai, she had just belonged from a higher caste Brahmin family, so that's why it was not allowed for her to just get married with a Shudra. But overcoming all the obstructions, hindrances, she had finally just married with a boy who had belonged from the poor family, even from a very Shudra family. So that's why she was thrown back out of the society by her family. But later on, she just went to England to study medicine. Can you just imagine? She went to England for the study of some medicine. During that time, it was also not allowed for the women to take education, but still overcoming all the obstacles, she just went over there. She had taken the education from the in London. She also set up a shelter for widows. However, her efforts attracted criticism for a section of the conservatives. Obviously, the conservatives, every time they will do the criticism. They don't have anything to do in the society, so that's why one thing is there for them, that is criticism. So the criticism came from the conservative society. Okay, in the 19th century, a large number of women took up the cause of the women's education, and a few peoples were very much renowned, and Pandita Ramabai was one of them. Sister Shubha Lakshmi of Madras and Begum Rokeya Shakhawat Hussain of Bengal. She was also a very was she a feminist? Yes, from my side she was a feminist, as because she had wholeheartedly tried a lot for promoting the women education. Even it was not allowed from her family to just take education, but still keeping in mind this thing, as because the family was very much conservative, but still keeping in mind, she secretly studied all the books. She was very fond of books. She had have a love with the books, so that's why she became educated. So in this context we can say that Pandita Ramabai, sister Shubha Lakshmi and Begum Rokeya Shakhawat Hussain, during that time in the mid of the 19th century, they had started to just educate the women. They were the inspirer. They had created an inspiration for all the Indians, for what the Indians they had started, means Indian women during that time they had started to just learn something, means that they had started to be educated. Okay, in Madras Presidency, the movement for widow marriage started under the leadership of Veerashlingam Pantulu. I mean, in Maharashtra, that was started by several peoples, amongst them Vishnu Shastri Pandit was there. Now in Madras Presidency, we are just moving back. So from there, Veerashlingam Pantulu, he had just done a tremendously good job over there, and being influenced by the Brahmo movement. What is the Brahmo movement? I will tell you in my next video, children, that was the Brahmo movement. But still, so Veerashlingam Pantulu, being inspired by Raja Ram Mohan Roy and his doctrines, his ethics and all these things, he also started a social reform movement in the Madras Presidency. He opposed the practices of idol worship, untouchability, caste distinction, child marriage, etc. He also argued in favor of women's education and widow marriage. He spread the reform movement of the Prarthana Samaj in South India. Many of the educated citizens of Madras stood up in support of that movement. However, only a few cases of widow remarriage actually materialized. Actually, children, let me tell you that what was happened. So many times the Indian reformist, just like Ram Mohan Roy, Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar from Madras Presidency, Veerashlingam Pantulu was there from Maharashtra, Vishnu Shastri Pandit, and Jyotirao Phule, he was also there from Maharashtra. They had tried a lot to promote the harmony amongst the Indians, to promote the social reforms amongst the all Indians, but the Indians, they were not actually ready to get all these social reform from the sides of the Indian intellectuals. They sort of think that this was also a conspiracy of the British government, so that's why they did not take it with rejoicely. Like, they had just felt that this was an evil intention of the British government to just convert our religion, means from Hinduism or Muslim to the Christianity. They had just thought that this was not very good for the Indians, so that's why every time they had just revolted. Whatever, it could be the Indians also, but still they had just revolted. They had just come with an outburst. So that's why all the social reform movements did not get lots of attention to the common peoples, but still gradually all the common peoples, they were also well acquainted with these social reform movements that were started by the Bengal intelligentsia or the legendary peoples during that time. Thanks for the listening, children, for today's class. Okay, so I just finished my video over here. By my next video I will start from chapter number 82, religious reforms of the Brahmo movement. I will start from there. Okay, I forgot to tell you that from page number 81, a few words, women education and Pandita Ramabai, a question will be there, so please just read that. From page number 79, a few words, Ram Mohan's argument, this is cross. I mean, from page number 79 to a few words are there, both are cross. Page number 78, a few words is there. Page number 81, a few words is there. And from page number 82, a few words are there. Swami Dayananda Saraswati and Arya Samaj is there, as well as a few words. Jyotirao Phule is also there. From Swami Dayananda Saraswati and Arya Samaj, a question will be formed, and Jyotirao Phule, for short questions only, you have to just read. Thank you, children. Thanks for just listening me. Stay safe, stay home. Bye bye.